Today, Marilyn, is this your first time for our community? Yeah, so this is a first-time community moment presenter, and Marilyn Gerber is going to talk about ADHD in adults. Let's welcome Marilyn to the podium.
ADD and ADHD is a neurological disorder that develops during childhood and can persist into adulthood. And it's linked to up to 71% of alcoholics, 25% of drug abusers, and up to 45% of our prison population. In women, it can lead to an increase in eating disorders, 7 times an increase in unplanned pregnancies, and can double the likelihood that she will take her own life. And it affects 9 million adults in the US, and 85% don't know it. I was diagnosed with moderately severe ADHD at age 25. And I went through several days of testing, and analysis of the TOVA test, which is a test of variables of attention. Returned to my doctor, stated that I should retake the TOVA because there is no way that I scored the way that I did and was a successful college student. And my response was, but I'm not a successful college student, that's why I'm here. My sister was actually the one who figured out that I had ADHD, and she had spent several years trying to figure out what was so woefully wrong with me. She thought for a while that I may have schizophrenia. That's how off the rails my life had become. I was completely out of control. She gave me a pamphlet with those self-testing questions, and I looked at it and said, damn, that sounds familiar. And then I set it to the side like I did with everything else and forgot about it for about 1.5 years while I switched majors again and had a child out of wedlock while I was absolutely had no money and was technically homeless. It was both a relief and a heartbreak to get the diagnosis. There was an answer for why I was the way I was, a reason, not an excuse for all my behaviors, but there was a reason, and there was the realization that my brain, I thought it was broken, that it's not something that you can just fix. This is just the way I'm wired, and I'm neurologically different. And I just had to figure out how to work with that. So I picked up this book called You Mean I'm Not Lazy, Stupid, or Crazy? And it's written by 2 doctors with ADHD. And as I started reading it, it was like somebody had been following me around my whole life taking notes, which was a little creepy. It validated me. This neurological problem of mine was not a defect of character any more than a diagnosis of dyslexia or diabetes is. And it showed me that I was part of a tribe full of people that were extraordinarily creative and intelligent, and I could succeed and be happy. I read everything I could get my hands on about ADD and ADHD in adults. I found a doctor who treated adults, which 20 years ago was difficult because the general consensus was it was just something you grew out of, instead of just understanding that you make behavior modifications as you grow up. You stopped standing on chairs and lifting your dress over your head like little children did. You know, you do things like I did. I'd make lists all the time. I twitched surreptitiously instead of tapping and poking people and, well, Salvadorian. Even when I appear perfectly still, I'm drawing designs inside my shoes with my toes all the time, 24/7, probably when I sleep. ADHD isn't just what you think about with kids, that they space out and can't calm down. It's a maldistribution of attention. It's an inability to focus coupled with hyper-focusing. There are times when I'm at work examining a piece of property, I'm a title examiner, assisting my coworker with his survey reviews, answering emails, personal and professional, watching TV on my phone or tablet, Facebooking, reading probates and trust agreements, updating files for closing, and checking my Chrome app to-do list, which is so full. And I do all of this at the same time, all day long, and I do it really, really, really well. Other times I might be working on something like writing a story or making a website, and I look up to find that 8 hours have passed. I have not stood up, I have not drank or eaten anything. My butt is numb, and you know, when I was younger, I was not sure if my child had been checked on. This hyper-focused Marilyn makes a hell of an employee. I don't like to stop when I'm in the middle of examining a piece of property, especially one that's taken a lot of research. I'll keep working until it's done. Unfortunately, that means that the laundry that I needed to do when I got home, or any chores or cleaning, doesn't get done. They aren't as fun for me as my work is, so I don't bother with those. I never get hyper-focused on those things. It honestly feels like a benefit to me a lot of the time. When things are crazy at work, I have a ton of work to do. There's a shitstorm going around in office politics. When there's drama going on with my kid, he's grown, but your baby's always your baby. And my sister is sick and I'm worried, I can just throw myself into work and files and I can do an amazing job and be Marilyn the Golden Girl and everything seems okay. I work 12 hours or more days and not get out of my seat maybe once or twice the whole time, and if I'm interrupted, I might find it very difficult to respond appropriately, but I've worked very hard at changing my what into how can I help you? I used to have such a short temper and sharp tongue that I make people cry. So that being able to change is a big deal. I had to stop doing that. It took a lot of work not to speak when I'm angry, and instead I take the time to consider what I want to say, how I'm going to say it, and if it needs to be said. I'm most proud of this. I caused a lot of pain, and I worked really hard to make the changes that I had to make to stop doing that. The impulse control issue is a huge part of the ADHD. In childhood, impulse control issues look like running through the house, knocking things over, jumping and climbing excessively on the furniture, engaging in risky behaviors with peers, engaging behaviors that annoy others, fidgeting in class or watching TV. My nephew, it runs in the family, destroyed furniture with his feet while watching TV. It can get downright dangerous in adults and teenagers. Speeding and dangerous driving, substance abuse. ADHD makes you much more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol as a way of self-medication, especially if you haven't been diagnosed. I used to run a group for ADHD with adults in central Houston, and there are a lot of people that used caffeine and then like cocaine and other stimulants, because ADHD medication is a stimulant. Risky sexual behaviors, starting fights or arguing. Got a lot of fights when I was a young adult. I don't do that anymore. Impulsive spending or overspending, that's something that happens with a lot of people with ADHD and adults. They ruin their credit. People who have ADHD almost always have depression, anxiety issues. It isn't easy being like this. Even if you have friends, you feel like everyone hates you because you do, especially children. Early and proper diagnosis is important, not just for schoolwork and so home life is easier, but to make it possible for these people to not start loathing themselves for being what they feel like is out of control freaks, and that are always getting in trouble and being inappropriate. ADHD does not look the same in boys and girls. In fact, females don't often get diagnosed until adulthood. Women with the disorder tend to be less hyperactive and impulsive, more disorganized, scattered, forgetful, introverted. They've alternately been anxious or depressed for years. It's this sense of not being able to hold everything together. One of the most frustrating things to hear about from a non-scientist person who doesn't have ADHD is to preach about it not being an actual disorder, or making statements like parents just want to dope up their kids so that they're zombies so they don't have to parent them. This is always the first clue that somebody doesn't have a clue what they're speaking about. Most ADHD medications are central nervous system stimulants, Ritalin, Adderall, Vyvanse, etc. If you don't have ADHD and you take them, it would be like drinking a pot of coffee or taking a bump of Coke. No one's turning into a zombie on these medications. I'll admit that I don't like Ritalin because I didn't feel like myself, but it certainly wasn't because I felt like one of the Walking Dead. Medication is not a cure-all, but when paired with awareness granted by diagnosis and behavioral modifications, such as assistive technology, bless smartphones. Environmental changes, comprehensive strategies, it has rendered my symptoms bearable, less unknown, less shameful. And while I'm certain I'll continue to misplace and forget objects, I've discovered the virtues of a little self-love and a lot of self-forgiveness, and even appreciation for what I thought was a broken brain but it's just a beautifully creative and clever brain that's wired differently.